For the last few weeks, we've been exploring our ministry theme to reflect on our lives and our church body, to reinvigorate our lives and our church body. And the third point in our ministry theme is to reach out. And so we're taking a small hiatus in the reach out part for a few weeks, and we'll come back to that in September. And this morning we turned back to the lectionary. And so I'll be reading this morning for our meditation Luke 12, chapter 12, and I'll be looking at 13 to 21. So let's listen to the words that Dr. Luke has for us this morning. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbitrator between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God." Here ends our reading. Be to God. Friends, that was the lectionary reading for this day, and as most of you know by now, here's my 7 cards of sermons. And I looked it over, and I was set to go. And then Friday happened. And Elsie and I have this running argument, you see, at the farm. She loves to watch MSNBC a lot because that gives her the information that she thinks she needs in the world. Anybody else? I tune in occasionally. Is it one of your sources where you look? Probably, I hope, among many. And I was out doing things outside, and I came in, and she was riveted in her rocking chair and just kindly said, "There's been a shooting in El Paso." And you know what? My first reaction was, "Again? Are you kidding?" And I went back outside because to continue to listen after you get the facts, basic facts as we know it from the story, our talking heads love to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And you could spend your whole life watching MSNBC, could we not? And so my mantra is try what you can do to get the amount of facts or suppositions that we have, and then, friends, carry on with your own life. So that's what I did. And then last night I reread my sermon. And boy, oh boy, just about everything that I had received from God about the text that I read this morning, we could extend to our whole country as it is right now, this morning, today. So I'm going to continue with this, and I'm going to ask you to, in your hearts and your own minds, try to draw that extension to San Antonio, to El Paso, and the other places in our country that have succumbed to, yes, the same kind of thinking. And before I do that, I'd like you to all do me a favor. I'd like you, when I say go, to make a list out loud to yourselves this morning in your pews, and I would like you to name out loud all of the folks here who have grandchildren. Name their names that are under 21. Just to yourself, and I'd like you to think about those people, as those kids, as you name your names. And if you aren't to the age that have grandchildren, or you don't have grandchildren, I'd like you to name the names of maybe your cousins or your dear friends, no matter how old you are. And I would like you to come up with a list of those people who are under 21 that are an integral part of your lives. I think that covers about all of us in there. Now, I know some of you guys, the great-grandchildren list, you'd be here until 2 weeks from Sunday here. So I'm going to leave that up to you in terms of the names. But I would like to keep those voices going until we end up with no more names to name among us. You set? I know it's a test for some of us to go, I got so many grandkids, is that number 17 or 6? Give it your best shot, all right? All right, here we go. Cindy. Tommy. Charlie. Chris. Keep going. I know some of you have a ton of grandkids. Keep listing. We'll wait. We're in no hurry. And together we can say, and all those we forget to name now. Yeah. Think about those names today for me, will you? Think about your kids' names. Think about your friends' names as we go forward. In a survey taken October 2018 in the United States of America, there were 13.6 millionaires. People who made $1 million or more, not including their home as an asset. By 2021, expect that number to be 18 million people who will be millionaires or multi-millionaires. We indeed are the richest country, more millionaires than any other country in the world. And I'm sure at this point I could pause and say, well, that excludes any of us, right? They must not live here. And I'll get to that in a minute because part of that's true. Dr. Tom Stanley, a researcher and author of The Millionaire Next Door, found that only 20% of those people became millionaires through inheritance, like our gospel story this morning. Only 20% of the people in our country became millionaires through inheriting the family fortune. 80% of our current millionaires are what they call first generation rich. Does that give anybody hope here? They started like you and I, and then their money grew intentionally. Now, you might be envious of these 18 million to be folks in 2021, and I'm wondering if any of you have ever said, if I just had $1 million, I'd. Or if I just had this much, I sure would. Okay, so some people play the lottery. They buy the lottery ticket every week. And there were 13 million lottery winners in the last 3 years across the country. And of those 13 million, 70% have used up all of their winnings. Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at your faces because I'm glad. That was my face when I read that statistic. What could they, did you think this right now? What could they possibly do with all that money in such a short time? Anybody? I don't want to know what your ideas are. Yeah, but the point is, how could they possibly spend all that? Well, let's keep going here. According to Fidelity Investments, in their recently released survey of the outlooks of millionaires, of 1,000 millionaire households, 42% of those millionaires don't feel wealthy. They don't feel wealthy. I want to say, well, what does that feel like? How do you know you don't feel wealthy? Now, the question is why? Well, they live in pockets, you see, on the West Coast, San Francisco, Palo Alto, who houses the most millionaires per square mile, San Francisco on the East Coast, totally up and down the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Manhattan, you know those names, and even in Chicago. Those places I've named are the 10 most expensive places to live. A few years ago, several years ago now, I was asked to do a summer teaching internship at Stanford University. Any of you know that where Stanford resides? Palo Alto. Yeah, Palo Alto. And so I thought that part in my residency was housing. And but they said to me, most faculty people lease or rent something for the summer. I was there for 3 months. So I thought, great. So I start my internet search and I find that for 3 months in a studio apartment, it was $3,700 per month, and that didn't include your utilities and all the special things. So I went, well, that's half of my salary for the year used up in 3 months, so no thank you. And I stayed on campus, which, anybody ever been there? It is a drop-dead gorgeous campus, no question about it. So let's enter the mind of our millionaires again, and perhaps the mind of who's called the rich fool this morning in the gospel story, when he said, I don't have enough room, so I've got to save for the future, so guess what I'll do? I'll knock the old stuff down and I'll build a bigger one. This morning we listened to the story in Luke 12, and we could easily argue that the rich man is a wise and responsible person, right? He's not asking anybody to do anything for him. He's saving for his retirement or his future. He has a thriving farming business. His land has yielded so much abundance that he doesn't have enough space to store the stuff. So he plans to tear them down and build super barns. You fill in the blank. I just need to remodel or relocate and build whatever. Then he'll have enough savings set aside to enjoy his golden years. Like the rest of us, right? Isn't that what we encourage and plan for in our young people? Isn't it wise and responsible to save for the future? I think most of us would agree with our so-called rich farmer. In fact, our farmer probably would have been a really good financial advisor. He's worked hard and he's saved wisely. Isn't that what he deserves? Isn't that what America's about? Isn't that what most of you and I want? To relax and enjoy the fruits of our labor? More importantly, the freedom to choose what to do with our time, right? Even if that's volunteer or help. If I work hard now, when I get older, then I'll be able to help other people. That is also stewardship, my friends. Stewardship of your time and talents. We may seem to labor just as hard as when we worked as when we retire, but guess what? It's our choice, isn't it? I choose to volunteer every day, 6 hours a day. To use our wealth of time is also one of our assets, gang. So this man has it right. Great. Or at least someone knows how to plan for the future and years of enjoyment here on earth. Well, gang, not exactly. One very important thing the rich man hasn't planned for is his responsibility to follow through on God's plan. Oops. Isn't it something that when you get passionate and obsessed with a particular thing, whether it's your work, and I hope you do love your work, those of you that work, for those of you who are still trying to find your passion in life, what is it that I want to do when I graduate? Well, when a survey was done of the 2018 graduating class, not this year, but last year's graduating seniors across the country, their number one passion, anybody want to guess? Paul just said playing on their phone, number one passion. Boo! Their number one passion was to make money. To make money. Is that bad? No. It's about provision for themselves, provision for their future, to have a place in society that people respect you because perhaps you do work hard and you do save some and you do have goals. There is nothing wrong with that. And in our story this morning, we learn that that is an okay thing. God wants you to work hard and provide and save. But as we have heard time and time again, Jesus also wanted to eat, drink, and be merry, right? How many times do we find him at somebody's house having some good food and drinking and dancing? So that's okay too. That's for all the retirees in the group there. So eat, drink, and be merry. Go on, y'all. And don't feel guilty about it. But here's the catch. You can't leave God out of the equation. You see, you can't say, this is what I'm striving for, and I am going to do everything I can to carve out a life for myself and my family. Oops, there it is. And God says to us this morning, wait a minute, you fools. What what about me? Don't you remember that you live and you breathe only because I say it is so? So now there's the rest of it right there. Here we are in the United States of America. And I spent about 3.5 hours last night, yes, my friend Paul, on my phone. But my phone was my internet connection to my colleagues, specifically my Presbyterian clergy colleagues, as we together bemoaned, prayed, and thought about what happened in El Paso. And we all came to the conclusion that if we, in our houses of worship, do this lectionary sermon today and draw no connection to the reality of where we are in time, then we are not standing up to our call as God's servants. You know, I have tried in the last 5 years to make this house a house of joy, a house of healing, a house of energizing and getting you up off your butts and going out in the world stronger. And I truly believe that is the call of any clergy in this country today. And I think that some of us, more than others, have taken the approach of reminding you how much you're loved by the one God, and then energizing you to get up and go out and just remind people that they are loved too. And if we all in this country would just do that, our younger people, age 21 and younger, would not have to go into a mall and with intent of some kind that we don't even know, take an AK-47 and shoot unsuspecting people doing back-to-school shopping. And before that, run the list of people, one single younger individual who doesn't know that they are loved. Obviously, that kid did not feel loved by anyone, including God, or in heaven's name, he would never have walked in and done that. And some 40 people, 20, who are not with us this morning, had their lives ended on Friday. And so God, in Luke 12 this morning, draw the connection, friends. In Luke 12, God says, "You fool, you didn't connect with me so I could tell you what to do with your lives and your possessions," which would have been to talk to a neighbor, to lift up a kid, to share what you have with another one person, and just maybe you'll change the course of their lives. Perhaps God was saying, "Fool, don't store it up in a barn where nobody who needs it can get at it. Take some of it and share that with somebody you encounter, because it may just change the course of their life." And you know what? I think on a real practical level, the people sitting here this morning with me who know and love God, who know and love each other and do smile when you come in the door in the morning. It's like, wow. You may even say, what's the crazy preacher going to do this morning? You know, because you never know what's coming out of my mouth. And the one thing that I hope most of you know after these last 5 years, it sure isn't me making up my own stuff. Because before I stand before you as the representative of Jesus Christ and your God, I submit all that I have and all that I am and all that I ever will be, so that the words of my mouth will simply be His words to you. And I take my call seriously. And so, friends, with other of my colleagues all over the country this morning, I can guarantee you that we are all preaching the same message. That we, all of us, my high school folks, my college folks, my newlyweds, we got two in the house this morning, two couples, you know. Here's the deal. The grandchildren that you named this morning, the grandchildren that you named this morning, Carol Berry, I'm looking right in her eyes and she's, yep, with me on that. All right, you all have them. You need to follow God perhaps a little more closely than you did last week. A little more seriously than you did last week. You need to find the reflection and the energy that you need to not be afraid to love people in this country. Because that, like the fool found out as God took him from this earthly life, is the will of your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And if you are able to be like Jesus, that's all it is, gang. Just try to be a little more like Jesus and a little less like the rich fool who says, I worked hard. I got all this stuff. I need to keep it for me and my family, because who knows what was going to happen to them? I have the answer for you. God knows. God will take care of your grandkids, but you have to help, not by giving them your riches, but by telling them how you live your life for the God that you sit here and worship this morning. It's easy. It doesn't take a lot of thought, but it sure does take a huge, humble heart. And the people said,